Derek Rowland. I'm the Deputy Chief of Staff and Director of Communications to the Honourable Lisa MacLeod, Ontario's Minister of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries. We're joined here by some other fantastic individuals, but let me turn it to the Minister to begin today's announcement.
Yes, thank you very much, Derek. I'm delighted today to be joined by my two parliamentary assistants, PA Ke and PA Sabaway, who have joined us to celebrate our volunteers. In addition, we are also graced with the presence of our Premier, Doug Ford, who has a few things he would like to say on behalf of all of our volunteers, and then I'll get directly into the announcement today. So Premier, you have often talked about the great Ontario spirit through COVID-19. You are a champion for all volunteers across Ontario. And I know you have some special words that you'd like to say to the 6,600 people who are being honored over the next couple of days.
Well, thanks so much, Lisa and Vincent and Sharif. I have to tell you folks, the three people on are the three hardest people working on your behalf, especially on the side of volunteerism. And our family, right from day one, that's how we ended up getting involved in politics, starting with volunteering in so many different organizations, be it the Cancer Society or Rotary. I'm a big believer in the Rotary clubs, Lion clubs, the Legions. There's so many that I haven't named, and there's just endless areas of opportunity for people to volunteer. And I just want to thank you, because Ontario wouldn't be Ontario without the thousands, and there's thousands, and I know there's over 6,600 being recognized today, being volunteering throughout this pandemic and even prior to this pandemic. But I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate all the great work that you do, and you just think of all the work you do. And I have some examples of Jacqueline, Susan, and Tammy helping out at the Girl Guides. I know my girls were brownies. They never hit the Girl Guides yet, but I have four girls, and bringing the brownies. It's so important, these organizations. And I just mentioned about the Royal Canadian Legion, and I'm glad Kathy is on with us today. So thank you, Kathy. I belong to the Legion here in Etobicoke North, and just great people. And I know how important role the Legion plays, especially in smaller communities throughout Ontario. I'm a big fan of the Legions. As well as Robert and Gail, that volunteering time to do gardening. That's amazing. You know, you're beautifying your communities, and just think, it wouldn't be that way unless you were out there doing the garden. And I've mentioned the Lions Club and the Rotary Club and the Shriners, and there's just so many organizations that give back. And that's how I first started, through the Rotary Club at a Christmas party. And we went there and helped a high priority neighborhood, handing out gifts. And my dad was away; he was traveling on business. So they look at me and looked at my big belly and said, "You're Santa Claus." So that's how we really got engaged with Rotary, and our families giving back through Rotary and other organizations. And I'm just, again, so grateful. You make Ontario a better place by all the work that you do. And I know there's a list of tens of thousands of people that volunteer. And my press conference I had the other day, I mentioned Maureen. She makes masks. She made 2,900 masks for people at her own home. And there's just endless stories about people doing that. She'd bring her husband down to Toronto at Baycrest Hospital. And I guess while she was waiting for him, she'd go out on the public benches and put $10 Tim Horton cards to help the homeless. But the people like that, they're quiet and they don't always get recognized. But I'm so happy that we can recognize over 6,600 volunteers, and that's what's been able to get us through this pandemic. Everyone pitching in and helping out and showing the true Ontario spirit that we've always said. And again, thank you, everyone. I'm very, very grateful. We just can't wait until we get back to normal or new normal, and we see light at the end of the tunnel. And with all your hard work, it makes things a lot easier, and especially for seniors and the most vulnerable out there, for helping out. So I want to thank you. God bless each and every one of you. Keep up the great work, because we wouldn't know what to do without you. So thank you, everyone.
And thank you so much, Premier. We're so grateful you were able to join us for the beginning of this announcement. Premier, there are, just before you have to pop off, we do have some volunteers from both your constituency and mine on the line. I'd like to recognize them before we get into the formal announcement. We have Abbas Ansari, who's been volunteering with Student Support Services at Algonquin College in Nepean. Raja Balendra, who is the past Railway Society of Ceylon, Canada, is from Etobicoke, has been volunteering for 10 years. Maria Godin is with the Air Cadet League of Canada, the 700 Squad sponsoring committee. She lives, of course, in Etobicoke North, and has been volunteering for 5 years. And we also have Virginia Grant with the Girl Guides of Ontario Council, and she's been volunteering for 40 years with our
God bless her. Well, that's amazing. Amazing stories. And I thank you, each and every one of you, for the great work that you do, and especially from the great state of Etobicoke North. So that's it's great. And if you ever need help, my office is over at Albion and Islington. Drop by anytime. We have a great team over there. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Premier. And
okay, I wish I could stay on. Do you have any other questions?
No, you're good to go. We just wanted to, we just wanted to make sure that our volunteers knew how supportive our Premier and our government is for the work that they do.
Thank you, Lisa. Very supportive. And I apologize, folks. They literally have me chock-a-block every single minute, running from meeting to meeting. But no one's more important than the volunteers. So again, thank you and God bless.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to conclude with, there's a few others that I just would like to recognize. Anna Perrone with the William Osler Health System, Ann Pettigrew with the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, Hortensia Puentes with the West Park Healthcare Center, Sherry Tam for Good News Music Group, and Seema Topra from the Ankara Library of Toronto. I just want to say thank you to all of you for joining me today. Last evening, we kicked off a province-wide volunteer recognition service to recognize the people who have supported our province throughout the last year. The Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries represents the largest volunteer sector in Canada. And while our sectors in Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries have been hit first, hardest, and have taken the longest to recover through COVID-19, these last 11 months have shown us that Ontario spirit that the Premier speaks about is alive and well. Through the Volunteer Service Awards, we honor local heroes like Myrna Hay, who's 82 years old and has been delivering the milk program and the pizza program, as well as doing other volunteerism in our community of Nepean for the past 57 years. They're like Sheila Schilotisky, who you will hear from later on today, who works with our veterans at the Barrhaven Legion. Sheila is a bartender there and offers her time day in and day out to make money for the Legion to support our veterans. And Alice Nasrallah, who you're going to hear from after I speak. Alice is in grade 10 at St. Mark's High School in Manotick. She has been working with the Osgood Youth Association for years now. And her most recent act of kindness and volunteerism was making Valentine's Day cards for seniors in our community and at the Osgood Long-Term Care Center. Together, along with the other 6,600 volunteers who will be honored in 27 ceremonies province-wide, they contribute to a whopping 82,347 volunteer hours. That's incredible. And I think it's worth noting that over half of Ontario's not-for-profits are run by volunteers. We literally could not operate Ontario without the philanthropic and volunteer sector that we so much cherish, which is why these awards are so important for each and every Ontarian who give their time and their service. I'd now like to invite Alice, who is at school today, to take a few moments to tell us about her volunteerism and what that means to her. Alice, thank you for joining us at St. Mark's, and we know your teachers have been very gracious in order for you to be able to participate today. So we'll turn it over to you.
Hi, sorry, it's a little loud. What do you want me to talk about?
We just want to hear about what you do with the Osgoode Youth Association.
Okay, well, I started volunteering there. I was pretty young. I think it was just after grade 8, so I could, when I started volunteering for volunteer hours. But I'd volunteered there before, and we mostly just do things to help out our community and make it better. There's a whole group of us that has been doing it for a while, and we've all gotten pretty close, and we just love working for our community.
And during COVID-19, Alice, your mom tells me that you and your friends beautified Osgoode Village to make it look Christmassy for everybody that was dealing with the stay-at-home order.
Yeah, we've been trying to keep the community involved and keep their spirits up during all these. We've made sun catchers for some seniors, and we've been organizing little events to keep everyone involved during these times.
Well, that's very inspiring, Alice. Thank you so much for joining us today. Say hello to your mom and dad for me, and thank your teachers as well for letting you take the time just to show off the inspiring work that you're doing as a young person to make our province a better place to live, work, and play, and to recover from COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
And thank you all. And we just have one final video of Sheila Schilotisky, who is a volunteer server and bartender at the Barrhaven Legion.
My name is Sheila Schilotisky, and I would like to thank the province and the Legion for this award. I have been volunteering for 16 years with the Legion, and later on I was asked to join the executive committee, which I took on the chair of hospitality, organizing the Friday night dinners and different functions. Later on, I was voted in to the as a third vice officer, which I served for a year, taking on other functions and still continuing with my bartending, which I am doing today.
I'd like to thank Sheila for that video, because I think it demonstrates that we have in Ontario ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I'll conclude with this before we take questions and answers from the media. Margaret Mead once said, "Never doubt a small group of committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, that's the only thing that ever has." And I think it's demonstrated by the 666 different volunteers that we are honoring across Ontario have contributed in many different facets of life. And I'm truly grateful as the minister responsible for these awards to be able to thank them through this virtual platform and through the media. So with that, Derek, I'm happy to take any questions from the media.
Thank you very much, Minister, and thank you to all of our speakers and dignitaries for joining us here today. As the Minister said, we will be taking questions from the minister or from the media. I just ask, we're going to follow very similar to the Premier's daily press conference with one question, one follow-up. If you do have a question, I just ask you to either use the raise your hand function on Zoom, or if you'd like to put your name and outlet into the chat box below, we'll individually unmute you. Minister, your first question comes from Lance Hornby. Lance, I will unmute you if you just want to accept on your end, and you can ask your question.
Hi, Lance.
Thank you. Oh, hello, Minister. Just wondered if there's any update on the American Hockey League Toronto Marley situation.
Yeah, and also the Belleville Senators, right? You know, that I'm from Ottawa.
That was my next
rivalry.
question.
The Premier and I have that rivalry. Look, we've been working very closely with the Senators as well as MLSC to try and get our AHL teams up and running. I'm feeling very confident. The NHL has provided us with a 600-page set of proposals that work for the NHL, and so they're very much in line and very similar. So I'm confident that we should have an answer very shortly through the Ministry of Health and through my colleagues' cabinet. So working steadily and in almost daily contact with both of our professional sports teams. We'd really like to see them get moving, because obviously we know that with the current COVID situation, it's very difficult for right now for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think they're a few short players, so they'll need to draw up. And I know that the Ottawa Senators are looking at sending a few players down to the AHL and pick a few people up. So it's time is of the essence, and so we're working steadily toward getting them back to play.
Thank you. A quick follow-up. It's a good sign. I know you're a ways off from having full people in the building, but it is an optimistic sign.
Well, so, I mean, obviously right now that's a very unlikely. However, just with this recent set of easy modifications and the stay-at-home order coming to an end in many different communities next week, we will be, I've been tasked with looking at what seasonal businesses reopening would look like. That would include sporting events and festivals. So that work is ongoing, early days, but you know, as we continue to move through this COVID crisis, we are continuing to work with those partners, both in sports and in festivals and events, to see what that return might look like. But again, really uncommittal at this point in time, because it is far too early. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Lance. Minister, your next question comes from Curtis Withers with the Canadian Press. Curtis, I will unmute you. If you just want to accept on your end, you can ask your question.
Hi, Minister. There was reports that came Monday that seemed to suggest that restaurants in Ontario might be available to NHL teams sort of before the general public. Since then, the NHL and the Toronto Maple Leafs have said, no, it's business as usual. We're going to be restricted to restaurants at arenas and hotels. I just was wondering if you could clarify whether, in fact, restaurants at large will be available to NHL teams, or will it be restricted?
It's restricted. As I said, the proposal put forward by the NHL was so comprehensive. It had well over 600 pages of details, including this restaurant piece. So those restaurants will not be open to the public, and it will be restricted. I mean, many parts of Ontario will end up being open as of next Tuesday. So, for example, if Ottawa, where the Ottawa Senators play out of, is back into the orange category, restaurants will be open to a maximum of 25 people anyway. But in this particular case, it's restricted, and was part of a very comprehensive proposal put forward by the NHL.
So just to be clear, sorry. So restaurants, like if the Toronto Maple Leafs were eating out, they would have access to restaurants outside of hotels and arenas?
I don't know if it was necessarily in each of the situations. I'm not quite sure exactly what those restaurants are, but they would not be open to the public. We can provide you with those details from either the Maple Leafs or the Senators on what facilities they actually have acquired, but they would be restricted to just opening for them while they are on the road and not integrating with the general public.
Great, thank you very much, Curtis. Appreciate your question. Minister, your next question comes from Travis Danraj with the Global News. So Travis, I will unmute you. If you just want to accept on your end, you can speak freely.
Hi, Travis.
Hi, Minister. Thanks for taking my question today. Listen, I know that the government is going to be making a decision on the future of March break very soon, but I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about your perspective on how this could potentially impact a lot of businesses, ski hills, different industries get a surge from March break, and what that impact could be.
Yeah, thanks, Travis. Obviously, last year, my sectors dealt with the emergency orders on the 13th of March, which meant March break programming was effectively eliminated last year. I'm a mother, so I'm going to sort of answer as a mother. I think that the Ministry of Education will make the appropriate call to maintain safety for our children. We know that these sectors will have a long road to recovery. But we were happy earlier this week to see some relief for our sectors, in ski hills in particular, where they were able to open up in the green zones this week, and in the rest of Ontario next week, with the exception of Peel, Toronto, and York. But the health and safety and well-being of Ontarians will come first and foremost. And so I'll let the Minister of Education speak to his decision and the cabinet decision that will be made. But the decisions that we make are not always easy ones, but they're they're the right ones with the data that we have in front of us. And so we recognize some of the challenges, but we also know that we need to keep students safe, and we also have to limit mobility. Right now, we have to make sure that people, while the stay-at-home order next week may be lifted in many places, we still must make sure that that people aren't traveling and spreading this disease. Do you have a follow-up?
Oh, sorry, Travis, I think you may have muted yourself.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, sorry, there's a bit of background noise. Yeah, I just wanted to know, obviously March break means a lot of tourism into Ontario as well. What's the financial impact of that?
Well, look, Travis, I can tell you that my suite of sectors in a traditional year would represent about $75 billion in economic activity, while also driving a very important social and cultural bottom line at the same time. We estimate early days in the pandemic that the tourism sector has lost about $20 billion of that. So it's obviously something that we're concerned about. However, we recognize in the industry and with our partners that right now is not the time to be traveling. And so that's why we will be unveiling at the appropriate time a 20% Ontario travel incentive tax credit that will be valued at about $150 million to get Ontarians to reconnect in the year of the staycation when it's safe to do so. We did see an uptick in tourism across Ontario this past summer. And so we're going to continue to work on that authentic Ontario experience at the safe and appropriate moment, and we'll always be guided by public health. And those in the industry have been working and pivoting and doing things differently. And I'll just give you one example, Travis, not to belabor it, but something that we were very proud of was we have a Celebrate Ontario Fund that funds festivals and events, and we pivoted that in the past year to call it a Reconnect Ontario. And that Reconnect Festival and Events program was for virtual drive-in and drive-through experiences. And so we're starting to notice a lot of creativity and innovation within the sector. So I'm happy always to do a follow-up with you on tourism if you'd like. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Travis. Minister, we're going to go to the phones next. We have Christina Suchi with CTV Ottawa. Christina, I will unmute you, and hopefully you can accept on your end and speak freely.
Hey, Christina.
So Christina, on my end, it says that I can ask you to unmute, but you need to accept. So if you're on the phone and that's not possible, if you'd like to text our press secretary your question, we'll be sure to read it out to get you the answer you're looking for. Minister, the next question that we have comes from Khalid Salma with My Second Home TV. Khalid, if you just give me one moment to find you here on my list. There we go. I will unmute you, and if you just want to accept on your end, you can speak freely.
Thank you so much. Minister, with the lockdown measures and everybody sitting at home, can we see more virtual tours with our hidden gems at the museums and tourism places, especially if we can have it in more than one language? Because, we have a huge audience and people who unfortunately know nothing about what we have here, and when they are asked about heritage, about our past, or whatever, they just roll their eyes, and that's it. Can we see this?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that question, and it's really complementary to the one that Travis asked about with respect to tourism. So I can tell you, for example, at the Ontario Science Centre and Science North, that they are doing more virtual programming than they've ever done before. Those are two agencies within the ministry. We also have two art galleries within the ministry, the Art Gallery of Ontario and the McMichael Gallery, and their online programming has increased, and so has their virtual learning with children across Ontario. And we continue to work with the Royal Ontario Museum and as well as many others to populate something called www.ontario.live, which is a virtual tourism, culture, and sport and heritage hub where you can get more online programming. I take your point about being multilingual, and so this is something that we are actively working on. And I'm very grateful that you asked that question, because I do think, as I like to say, Ontario is the world in one province. We're one of the most diverse in the world jurisdictions, and that's something we should be absolutely proud of, and making sure we continue to display that, not just here in Ontario within our own communities, but abroad as well, as we recover and stabilize the tourism, culture, heritage, and sports sectors, but at the same time, eye to recovery and to economic and social regrowth.
Thank you. And my follow-up, can I ask for seeing a program that teaches the language of the First Nation, and not only for kids, but for everybody, because this also helps people know about our past, what Canada is, and what would be our future as well.
Yeah, that's a fabulous question. We are making investments through this ministry into Indigenous arts and Indigenous tourism, as well as Indigenous sports and wellness. And so we continue to work with our First Nations partners on how we can best support them. And my hope is through our recovery plan and the white paper that we've just written and released, that the Indigenous tourism piece will be expanded in Ontario, and that would obviously include supports for them teaching others about their history, our shared history, and our path to reconciliation.
Thank you very much for your question, Khalid. Just a reminder to any more media on the phone or on the line, if you do have a question, please use the raise your hand function, or if you want to put your name and outlet into the chat box below, I'll individually unmute you. Minister, we do have a read-in from Christina Succi with CTV Ottawa. She says, "Hi, Minister. On a local level, and given how well Ottawa has done with lowering its case counts, what is your position on allowing Ottawa to go on March break, i.e. on a regional level?"
Look, I think that we'll take this decision as a cabinet. I'll let the Minister of Education, Stephen Lecce, speak to that more broadly. I think I will repeat what Dr. Etches and Dr. David Williams have said. Although the numbers are improving, anything can happen, and we have seen that throughout this pandemic. There is a lot of uncertainty with respect to the different COVID strains that are coming into the country, whether that's the UK variant, the Brazilian variant, or from South Africa. So we still are in the middle of a global pandemic, and we'll have to be guided by public health advice as we move through this process.
Thank you. And the follow-up is the byword market is dead. Tourism has taken a huge hit, especially in Ottawa, and teachers are saying that they're feeling burnt out. Do you feel that there's a positive to having March break go ahead?
Well, look, I'm going to answer this one as first a mother and then as Minister of Tourism. Number one, I respect and understand, many people are feeling very burnt out, but I think the return to school was very important for many moms and dads, as well as for our children. And so I think that, getting the kids back in school was critical. With respect to the byword market, as I've mentioned many times, my sectors were hit first, hardest, and they will take years to recover. We're not talking a couple of months. We're not talking a year. We're talking maybe 5 to 10 years before we're even going to see the international travel back. So what we've recently done in my white paper for the ministry is look at how we can recover over a multi-year period. And part of that is making sure that we have gateway cities. So Ottawa and Toronto, our provincial and our nation's capital, will be key in leading that economic recovery. And that's why I have asked Michael Crockett, as well as Anina Kressler, the first being the head of Tourism Ottawa, and Nina being the head of the Shaw Centre, to join me in having a conversation with Toronto to see how we can best rebound and get our tourism back up and running when it's safe to do so. As I mentioned earlier, we did see an uptick in the summer with respect to homegrown tourism. So our idea will be to have and support hyper-local tourism, and then of course initiate that Ontario travel incentive, the 20% tax credit when it's safe to do so. Again, we're in the middle of a public health crisis, and so we will be guided by the advice of the Chief Medical Officer of Health and his team.
Thank you very much, Minister. And your last question comes from Charlie Sinat with the Barrhaven Independent. Charlie asks as a read-in, hi there, his question regarding the accusations of a manager at an Ottawa retirement home who's giving a vaccine to his wife instead of to a housekeeper, according to a report from the Ottawa Citizen. What are your thoughts on this, and do you support MPP Joel Harden's request for a full investigation into the alleged incident?
Well, look, this is the first I'm hearing about it. Obviously, it's inappropriate for people to be jumping the queue. We have been very clear with the ethics-based approach that General Hillier has been taking, and we are trying to get vaccines into the arms of our most vulnerable population. So I think you may want to speak with the Minister of Long-Term Care, who is also from the Ottawa area, to see how she is going to respond. But I think there should be no queue jumping here. We need to protect our most vulnerable. This is a global pandemic that has thrown many twists and turns our way, and we need to make sure that those who are most susceptible to this virus are protected.
Great. Well, thank you very much for making yourself available today, Minister. That is our last question. We want to thank everyone else for joining us for today's announcement as well.
Yeah, and just another thank you to our 6,600 volunteers from across Ontario who have contributed more than 82,000 years worth of volunteerism. You really are the superstars here, and we couldn't have done it without you. So thank you so much, and I'm very grateful. And everybody stay safe.